Today we are going to discuss about views and perceptions. To understand it better, open the browser and in the browser I will open Google Chrome and in the search window type Google Maps. So, this will come, you have the first link maps.google.com, click on it and comes to Google Map. And now, right now in the search window here, type Blender Studio India and you are going to see our location, Blender Studio, first floor, third main road. You just click on this location and this will bring you to our studio location in India. So, this is my location on this globe and now you have layers here. If I click on layers and enable satellite view, and now I will just rotate the mouse up to zoom in and I will press the left mouse and I will move it. I will just zoom in and you can see my location here, Blender Studio. This is my location and when you are seeing my location, you are going to see certain locations to the right side of my location. For example, this second main road is to the right of my building, whereas this Prashant Nagar Park is to the left of my building. So, this is a view, this is a global view of our studio that we are seeing it from the satellite. So, from the space when you see the earth, you are going to see this in this form, and here when you are going to see different objects. Now, the reference point is our Blender Studio. So, let us keep the Blender Studio at the center of our screen, and to actually know what all is to the right and what all is to the left, to see this, we are going to draw an imaginary line here and we call this imaginary line as the x axis, and this is always represented in red color. We represent this red axis in x axis in red color. Similarly, you have some objects to the top of my studio, that is above my studio, and you have some locations to the bottom of my studio. And for this, what we are going to do is, we are going to draw one more imaginary line that runs from top to bottom, and we are going to call this line as y axis, and this y axis is always represented by green. So, red represents the x axis, green represents the y axis, and this is how Blender will work. Blender is going to see the world from God's view. We can call this as God's view. If the God sees our home from his place, it will appear in this way, or if you see it from satellite, this will appear in this way. This is the perception of God or the perception of nature. So, this is how Blender is going to identify your view. So, this is one view. However, when you are seeing in this view, my building appears to be some square block. You cannot know exactly how my house is or how my studio is. So, if you want to see how my studio is correctly, in Google Map, you have a facility called Street View. When I enable Street View, you can see the street blue icons here, and if I click on the blue icon somewhere here, if I click on it, now see what happens. You are going to see my location from the ground, and what you are seeing now here, this is the front view. Okay. At that time we were seeing it as top view and this is the front view, and now what happens is whatever axis you are seeing here left to right is again the x. However, now you have another axis which is running from ground to sky, and this axis which is running from ground to sky is the third imaginary line that we are going to use, and we are going to call it as the z axis. So, we have three imaginary lines drawn at every location, one horizontally to represent x, one from the top view to draw it y, and from the front view we have z. So, this is how Blender workspace is going to work. And now, if I turn like this, this is right side view. See, this is front view. If I turn to my right, this is my right side view, and now if I turn this side, this is my left view. So, these are the different kind of views that are present when we navigate through our 3D world. This is just similar to how we navigate in our real world. Just like you navigate in Google Maps, you move forward, this is front, this is right, this is left, and if I turn this side, this is back, and if I lift my head, this is top and this is bottom. So, top bottom is always z axis, left right is always x axis, front to back is always the y axis. So, this is how the axis works in Blender. So, to understand this, let us come back to Blender. So, right now I will close the browser, I will launch Blender, and once you come into Blender, once Blender is launched, click somewhere to close this welcome screen, and as soon as you launch Blender, this 3D viewport is showing you this cube, the default item in a view called as user perspective. You can see it here. Okay. Now, if I go to view, and at the same time on the right hand side, you see this axis, you have y, x and z present over here, and the opposite of y is here, opposite of x is here, opposite of z is here. So, now if I go to view, viewport and top view, this is God's view, or this is the natural view that you see the world from space. And when you see the world from space, you see one line running horizontally, and we call this as the x axis, which is represented by red color. You have another line running from top to bottom, and we call it as y axis. It is represented by green color, and I come to view, viewport, and if I choose front view, now here the colors change. See, the horizontal line is still x, but the vertical line is now blue, because this is now the z axis. You are seeing z and x axis. So, similarly, if I come to view, viewport, and if I choose right view, now what happens? You are going to see this horizontal is now not x axis, but y axis, and the vertical line is still the z axis. So, this is how we navigate in the screen. So, now this navigation can be carried out very easily in Blender by using keyboard shortcuts. Always use your keyboard shortcuts, and we normally use the number pad to do this navigation. Now, I have enabled the screencast key. You can see here which key I am going to type. When I press 1 on the number pad, see what happens. When I press 1, numpad 1 will give you front view, and when you press numpad 7, you are going to see it from top view, and if you type numpad 3, you are going to see it from right view, and if you type numpad 9, you are going to see it from left orthographic. This view is called as orthographic view. So, you have 1 for front view, 7 for top view, 3 number pad for right view and 9 for left view. Similarly, when I press 1 and if you are seeing it in front view, if you press shift and press 1, you are going to see this in the back view. This is the back view, and similarly, if I press 7, if this is the top view, if I press shift and plus 7, this is the bottom view, and similarly, if I press 3, if this is the right hand view, if I press shift and 3, this will be the left view. So, this is how we navigate in Blender. Apart from it, if you click the middle mouse of your mouse, if I click it and if I turn it, you can just navigate around the scene like this. See, I can turn around and see this cube from any angle like this. I can turn around like this. Remember, in your mouse, when I am actually rolling the mouse, you are zooming in. When I am moving the mouse away, you are zooming out. You have this zoom button here. The keyboard shortcut or the shortcut for this is your mouse wheel. So, I can click here and zoom in and out. Next, I will just zoom it very close now, and if I press shift and middle mouse, see what happens. I can now pan. I am just going to move from left to right, right to left, top to bottom or bottom to top. This is called as panning. Panning is carried out by pressing shift and middle mouse button. And next here, if I actually if I press this camera button here, you are going to see this picture in the camera view. This is the actual view that will get rendered finally. You are seeing this in the camera view, and for the keyboard shortcut to see the camera view is numpad 0. If you press numpad 0, you are going to see this in camera view. And finally, in this view, you have two types of view. Actually, in camera view, you have only perspective view. If I press numpad 7 and if I come to the top, I will just zoom out. This view is called as orthographic. You have the shortcut here. If I click it again, now this view is perspective. You can see the difference in the grid you are seeing at the bottom. See, when you are in orthographic, see how the grid appears. Okay, it appears flat, but when you are in perspective, you can see the grid is moving in a perspective view. You can see the perspective. So, how this perspective and orthographic works, we are going to discuss it later. Now, to understand this views and perspective better, in our next session, we are going to model an animation. I will just show you that animation. Go to File, Open, click Don't Save, and in the lesson file or in the link that has been provided to you, you have one file 3 axis arrows animated finished. You double click to open it. Now, if you play this animation, you can see the arrows moving in 6 directions, and you can just preview it and see how from different directions these arrows are moving. You can just move around and have a look at it. And this animation, we are going to create it in our next session. So, to summarize, in this session, we discussed about the views. I will stop the animation. So, now here if you come, we discussed about various views. If you press 7 on num keyboard, it is top view, 1 is front view, 3 is right view, shift 3 is left view, 1 is back view and shift 7 is bottom view. So, these are the different views, and when you press the middle mouse and rotate, you can pan around like this. Okay, you can turn around and see it like this, and if you just roll the mouse, you are going to zoom in and zoom out, and if you press shift and middle mouse, you can just pan it. So, this is the way we do our navigation. So, with this I will conclude this session, and in the next session we are going to learn about how to move things by making this simple animation of arrows. Thank you.